Welcome, everybody, to 52 Living Ideas. Tonight, we are covering the Analects, Book 15. We'll start with Chapter 6. We'll have 1 to 2 readings of the text, and then we'll go to Jason's translation. We'll ask that you actually keep your comments. We'll open it up for comments after Jason goes through his translation. We ask that you keep your comments to the text itself, and then we can open it up for a more wide-ranging discussion a little bit later on in the evening after we've completed several of our chapters this evening. Okay, with that, would anybody like to read their version of the animal?
I can read James Leggy.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Just chapter 6?
Oh, 6, 7, and 8. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Chapter 6. The master said, "Truly straightforward was the historiographer Yu. When good government prevailed in his state, he was like an arrow. When bad government prevailed, he was like an arrow." 2. A superior man indeed is Chu Po Yu. When good government prevails in his state, he is to be found in office. When bad government prevails, he can roll his principles up and keep them in his breast. Chapter 7. The master said, "When a man may be spoken with, not to speak to him is to err in reference to the man. When a man may not be spoken with, to speak to him is to err in reference to our words. The wise err neither in regard to their man nor to their words." Chapter 8. The master said, "The determined scholar and the man of virtue will not seek to live at the expense of injuring their virtue. They will even sacrifice their lives to preserve their virtue complete."
Is that book 15? Is that?
I don't know. This is book 15 here. That's the wrong thing.
Sounds like you read the wrong.
Yeah, it's a very different version, and then one that
is that the are you reading the chapter of book 15?
Book 15, chapter 6.
Yeah.
She finished with 15.9 and not 15.8.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
Was it the wrong chapter?
No.
You just read one more.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just looking up the Leggy version.
Organize it the same.
No. Yeah, Penny is reading the Leggy version, and what I was just looking up was the Leggy version, and it appears he consolidates a couple of verses, which is why her 8 was R9.
Okay.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Should we go through to 9 then?
No, that's through to 8 because the 9
Okay.
and the 10 I tend to put together because they're both talking about Ren, and
That works.
6, 7, 8, 3 of these talking about the language, how you speak.
Okay. Would anybody else like to read their version of the Analects?
I can read the Ino.
That'd be wonderful.
Okay, so 15.6. Zhu Chang asks about effective action. The master said, "If your words are loyal and trustworthy, and your conduct sincere and respectful, though you be in distant barbarian state, you won't be effective. If your words are not loyal and trustworthy, and your conduct not sincere and respectful, though you be in your own neighborhood or district, can you be effective? When you stand, let these thoughts appear before you. When you ride in your carriage, let them appear, leaning on the carriage bar beside you. Zhu Chang inscribed those words on his sash. 15.7. The master said, how straight Shi Yu is. When the Tao prevails in the state, he is like an arrow. When the Tao does not prevail, he is like an arrow. A Junzi, which Yu Bo Yu, when the Tao prevails in the state, he serves. When the Tao does not prevail, he can roll it into a ball and hide it by his heart. 15.8. The master said, to fail to speak with someone whom it is worthwhile to speak with is to waste that person. To speak with someone whom it is not worthwhile to speak with is to waste the words. The wise man wastes neither people nor words.
Thank you, Quan.
Oh, sorry. One.
I'll let you share it, Jason, but I'll read from my copy.
Okay, let me turn on. Hey, how come it's always the wrong version?
Unless you need me to share it.
Just let me try one more time.
Okay.
Do you see the?
There we go.
Okay.
We can see it.
Six.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, let me get to mine. There we go. 15, verse 6. Zhejiang asked about behavior. The master said, if you speak sincerely, are trustworthy, and behave honestly and respectfully, you can travel through distant barbarian states. If you don't speak sincerely, nor are trustworthy, nor behave honestly or respectfully, can you even travel in your own country and neighborhood? When you stand, let these words appear before you. When you are in your carriage, let these words lean on the front bar. Then you can start to travel. Zhejiang wrote these words down on his sash. 15.7. The master said, how straight the historian Yu. When the state was in Tao, he was straight like an arrow. When the state was not in Tao, he was straight like an arrow. What a junzi Shubo Yu is. When the state was in Tao, he worked for the government. When the state was not in Tao, he could collect all his knowledge and hide it. 15.8. The master said, if you don't speak with those whom you should speak with, you lose the people. If you speak with whom you shouldn't speak with, you lose your words. The wise neither lose people nor words.
Thank you, Amon. So I think these three chapter 6, 7, and 8 are all related to language or behavior. So let's start from chapter 6. First, Zizang, as we know. Okay, so here is a poem here. Zizang Wen Xing. Okay, this word, Chinese word, let me enlarge a little bit. Okay. The word Chinese in Chinese called Xing. These same words have a double meaning. First means behavior. Okay. Also means travel, walking. Okay. Walking through, travel. Okay. So I think this take advantage of the Chinese word Xing has a double meaning. So Zizang asked about Xing. Okay. Here he meant, of course, he meant the moral meaning of travel. That means his behavior. So the master said, okay, 14, right? Sincerity, okay, and trustworthy, I think some translation will like translate as loyal, and I will prefer translate as sincere. Okay, and then behave should be honestly and respectable, right? So then he said you can 行, but this word means physical 行, not morally 行, which is travel through the distant state, even barbarian state, with the right language and the right behavior. You can travel in the distant barbarian state. But if you don't have this, even in your own neighborhood, you cannot 行, which means travel, or without the moral meaning of travel, you even cannot move in your neighborhood. I think that's a Confucius answer. So it's a very important teaching in Confucian morality. And another important thing is Confucius said, when 立则见于前. Okay, when you stand, you should see this word in front of you. Okay, when you stand, it means you are going to walk, right? When you get on your car, your carriage, you should see on your driver's seat, right? In your driving wheel, okay, on your front bar. So you always see it. So Confucius means you should always remember these words, okay? Sincerity, trustworthiness, honest, respect, the respectful, okay? All these things in front of you. Doesn't matter you are walking or you are driving. So Zizang, as a very young junior student, take Confucius' advice literally. So he wrote it down on his sash. Okay? So he can always see this word. Okay, I believe if not Zizang instead of Zilu, he probably would not write it down. Because, okay, so that's 6. 7, a little bit different in the translation. Here he talked about the guy called Shi Yu. Okay, Shi Yu. Okay, so the person's name is Yu. Okay, and then his job is Qi, which is historian, official record. Okay, the official job. So I think here Confucius means this guy Shi Yu compared with another person, Qu Boyu. Okay, remember we talked about Qu Boyu is Confucius' old friend. So here he talked about, I think both Yu and Qu Boyu work in the state of Wei. So Yu tried to recommend Qu Boyu work for the government, but the lord, the prince, the ruler refused. So on Shi Yu's dying bed, deathbed, he kind of asked his son not bury him, use this method to make sure the ruler listen to him. So the lesson here is Confucius said Yu, okay, the historian Yu is straight. We can take metaphor straight. You are straightforward. Okay, doesn't matter the state is in Dao or not in Dao, okay, or mean in order or not in order. He always act the same way. Then he talked about his friend. It's a Junzi. When the state is in Dao, he work for the state. When the state is not in Dao, Confucius used the word 卷而怀之. Okay, and I think Eno's translation says roll up like a ball and go away. And I think I have a different interpretation. I believe here means you collect everything and leave. Okay, so I will assume collect your belongings. I believe probably means collect what you have learned, collect what your knowledge, and hide it. Why means hold it, means hold the thing you have and leave. So that's metaphorically, and really depends how you're going to interpret. Chapter 8. This one again talk about language, right? And this one is a wise language, good advice for everybody, even today, right? So you will face the situation, right? Some people will lose people or lose word, right? So if you don't speak with those you should speak with, right? That means the righteous person. You lose these people. You should talk to the right people, virtuous people. If you didn't talk to these people, you lose these people. Some people, let's say, it's evil people or so-called small men, never talk about virtuous or meaningful thing, always into the small chat. Okay. If you spend time to talk these people, you lose the word. The means you lose, waste your word. So two situations, right? You only speak to the right person, the good person, the virtuous person. If you don't, you lose the people. And you don't speak with people you should not speak with. Okay. If you did so, that means you waste your words. So that's Confucius teaching here. So Amon, I'll put to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I dropped Xing into the chat with the etymology because I do think that it's kind of it's the pivot of these three verses and the crux of the argument that Confucius is putting forward here about the power and utility of words, of choosing the right words, whom you speak with, when to speak them, where to speak them. I was just reading back over it, and I know I wasn't here last week, but I have to once again point out the very previous chapter when he talked about before this 15.5 that the sage king Shun was the only one who could govern with Wu Wei. That is a direct argument of why the Taoist idea of Wu Wei is not utilizable. It's not useful for normal people to use in governance. In the same way, this argument about the power of words is an extension of his philosophy of what governance needs to be. To move in the world in an effective way, you need the right words spoken to the right people at the right time. You need to actually be measured and thoughtful about what it is you say. That is the centrality of these three verses. When he's talking to Zhejiang, he really is saying that if you've got it down, if you're a wordsmith and you're speaking your mind clearly and effectively, then even those for whom eloquence isn't appreciated are going to respect you, are going to allow you to have sort of a carte blanche of their terrain, as it were. Not that you couldn't literally be understood, that you would be unintelligible, but barbarian lands implies that this is a place where the written word, scholarship, knowledge is not well prized. And therefore, if you're coming across as too uppity or too snooty, you probably aren't going to get very far. But if you're really good, if you really know how to craft your thoughts into the proper words for the proper place, a situation like that's going to present no problem to you because you're not going to come across as if you're putting on airs. Excuse me. And in the same way, when he talks about Shibo Yu, he's talking about how he followed his path correctly. He was on the straight and narrow. He absolutely knew which way to navigate and move through the world, whether the world around him was on his side or in utter chaos and tumult. He still had a straight way to go. And when it was in utter chaos and tumult, he took his knowledge, his words, because that's how you record your knowledge, is in the written word, and you roll them up and you hide them close to your chest so you don't share those with unworthy people. And then again, in chapter 8, it kind of brings the whole argument home. if you speak to whom you should, or excuse me, if you don't speak to whom you should, you'll lose people. That's pretty easy for, I think, most of us to wrap our head around. If I don't, take the time to pay attention to the student I need to speak to, then that student is just forfeited. I'm forfeiting their attention. However, if I take too much time to speak with people whom I shouldn't, in other words, if I'm just, in my personal example, I'm talking with kids I find fascinating on campus, but they're not in my class and they're going to graduate. My words are going to flit out in one ear, out the other, and it won't have the same impact as speaking to whom you should, and it will waste my words. And the wise neither waste people nor words. And so you do these things in the right way at the right time. That's really what I think is at the heart of these three passages.
Thank you, Mon. So now we will open it up for comments. If anybody has comments on any of these passages, go right ahead and we can actually get started. Quan. Nick is next.
I would say that those three paragraphs are very interesting because once again, it's about the interaction between the upper trigram and the lower trigram. Because in the three cases, wisdom is extolled, but at the same time, each of the three paragraphs stress the fact that you need to be street smart or street wise at the same time in your interaction with others. And I take the example that Amon just gave for if you're in barbarian lands, meaning that if you're in lands not having the same symbols and the same historical or cultural traditions, it would be a bit a loss of time or even counterproductive if you explain your stuff using your cultural background. It could be very counterproductive. So it is being streetwise and not to use precisely your cultural background, explaining universal things. Same for the guy who is an arrow. He's the same. Okay, either when the Tao is prevailing in the state or when the Tao is not prevailing in the state. So here, that paragraph underlines the unwavering presence of the upper trigram precisely, in the sense that, once again, and here, anyway, I'm speaking to people who knows those things, so I would not hesitate to use the symbology of Confucianism. The guy who is straight as an arrow is the same in the sense that he is unwaveringly in the upper trigram, independently of the situation in the lower trigram. Okay, state in the Tao, a state not in the Tao. And finally, maybe a last word on the inseparability of knowledge and action. And I would say that those three paragraphs also are addressing that principle, that the inseparability of knowledge and virtue at the first level, and the inseparability of knowledge and action. And I stop here.
Thank you, Quan. Nick.
Just want to make a comment on the last verse, verse 8. This may be reading him from the modern perspective, but I see an echo of Wittgenstein, which he said, if you have something to say, say it. If you don't have anything to say, shut up, right? So, but obviously, Confucius was framing this in an interpersonal context. He wasn't thinking about analytical philosophy, but it's very, very interesting for me to see that echo. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
That is an interesting connection that, Jason.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting comment, and I also find Amon's comment is interesting. He speak to the student worthy to speak and talk, or don't waste time to speak to the student who, if you take the utilitarian or pragmatism point of view, you can read this one. But I just, after I heard what Amon said, I double read in this one. Confucius didn't say, he just said, if you don't speak with those who you should speak with, okay? And another case is if you speak with whom you shouldn't speak with. So he just used 可语言不可语言 means you should not. So he didn't say you should speak with the virtuous people. You can take a Nick point of view, Wittgenstein point of view. Something makes sense, you speak. Cannot speak, you don't speak. Or you can take a pragmatism point of view. Okay, I only speak to the person who useful, okay, and not useful. Anyway, I think that's good advice. And same thing on the chapter 6, right? If you keep this kind of Confucius morality, you can travel even in the barbarian day. One thing think about is when I 30-something years ago, I came to America, I didn't speak English or just very little English. And if based on Confucius teaching with some proper attitude, right, proper style, I even can walk through this so-called barbarian land, which means totally different custom, totally different language, right? I can walk through with this kind of personality. And if I don't have this kind of personality, even in my own neighborhood, I have a problem. People will point at me, complain about me. I have a difficulty to behave over there. That's another way to look at this.
Thank you, Jason. Amon.
Yeah, Nick's comment about the Wittgenstein, just I had to jump in because I agree. I do think that Confucius and early Wittgenstein have a lot in common about the sort of logical linkage between propositions in the world and the use of language in a practical game, as it were. I think that early Wittgenstein and Confucius would have gotten along swimmingly. I think later Wittgenstein and Confucius would have clashed quite a bit because the supremacy of the spoken and written word was something that came under investigation and assault by Wittgenstein in his later work. But I don't think it ever lost its place of primacy in the Confucian philosophy.
Thank you, Amon. We'll go to Mark next.
Thanks, Joseph. I'm in the car, so sorry for any background noise. I was also going to comment on the logic of these, and it seems as if there are some kinds of inversions that take place, we might say, or analogical reasoning. If you do A, then you can do B, but if you don't do A, then you won't be able to do C, that type of thing. And I think it's fascinating that he used those 4 terms, which I'm hoping that someone could drop into the chat, that were variously translated as trustworthy, honesty, sincerity, truthfulness. And I think that, I don't know if we want to make anything turn on the various translations of those 4 terms, but it would be interesting at least to know what four terms are being contrasted here. And what I was wondering about those, is he pointing to something universal, saying, yes, as Amon said, you might go into these barbarian cultures, they're not literate, but literacy may not be a necessary condition for humanity in this sense. If all of these four ethical traits, we might want to call them, are recognized potentially among barbarians, does that imply that they somehow have a universality to them? Thanks.
Does a written word have, is it that required for ritual in a sense?
Can I tackle that real quick? The
Yeah.
short answer, no. We cut down a Christmas tree, we put it up. You don't need a written word for that holiday ritual to perpetuate itself. But to explain it, to understand it, and as ritual becomes more complex, the more you can capture in writing, the more faithfully you can execute it. And I did drop those four terms Mark was asking for into the chat. I have to go back through and pull out the Chinese, but it's sincerely, trustworthy, honesty, and respectful.
And by written word, I also meant literate, but thank you, Amon. So yes, yeah, commenting on Mark's. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, yeah. Same. Quick. I will specifically say this one is this verse. I think chapter 6 is nothing to do with rituals. Okay, because ritual is highly tied to your culture, your background. So if you don't, here is beyond the beyond the rituals, right? You go to the barbarian land, or let's use the word, a more civilized word, the foreign land, right? They definitely have a different rituals. Okay, some people shake hands, some people hug in American. Okay, so even the rituals or customs are totally different. With these four virtues, think among drop here, sincere, trustworthy. This is related to your word. Okay, honest and respectful. That's related to your behavior, your action. So with this virtue, you don't need ritual, right? Let's put this way. Another thing I'd like to respond to Mark is I'm glad Mark pay attention on the logic, Confucius logic here, which as working hard on translation, logic is very important. And I do realize the later books, which are compiled by more on his later student, and I believe they have some way to sort it out. So I find out two things in this chapter. You can pay attention on this. One is Confucius like to use the way like 君子 do this way and 小人 small man do this way. And these two things are just opposite. Okay, that's first thing he like to do. 君子 do something, small man do the opposite. Okay, so one example with 君子 do A but not B. Small man will do B but not A. Okay, in chapter 8, Confucius' logic is if A, then B. If not A, then not B. So if you learn logic, or you know this logic is not correct, not 100% correct. In general, it's right, but not 100% correct. But you can find out that's the logic Confucius. Well, I don't know Confucius really use it or not, but at least the Analect is written in this way. So I think that's interesting to pay attention. And we may see the logic is not sound logic. Okay, a lot of problem here. But compared to during this time, and assume they never read Aristotle, they never learn logic. I think it's very well, right? Compared to Plato, okay, at least better than Plato's writing. The Western philosophy after Aristotle, the logic got much clearer. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Jason. Go on.
Okay, so I would like to make two comments concerning the question of rituals that is related to one specific culture, that is for sure. But I would like to make the hypothesis that here rituals can be interpreted in a broader perspective, because I would like to remind everyone, paragraph 2.1, what's a run? A run is to conquer oneself and to return to Li. Okay, so here we can understand ritual Li as the right behavior in a specific situation, notwithstanding your cultural background. In that sense, I think that we can understand rituals perfectly as related to a certain cultural background. But I think that the broader understanding of culture can be the right human behavior, notwithstanding the cultural background. That's for one. For two, concerning the fact that rituals is before theology, maybe I don't know if you guys know a little bit certain anthropological discoveries, but in anthropology, it is a well-known stuff that rituals always precede theology or systematic explanation of cosmogony. Okay, and I give two examples. The Indian perform the sacrificial rituals as prescribed in the Rig Veda for centuries before explaining in the Upanishad the cosmogony and the psychology and the epistemology related to those rituals. The same for the Chinese. Under the Shang dynasty, they perform a lot of sacrifices and of sacrificial rituals, but they had to wait at the end of the Shang dynasty and the beginning of the Zhou dynasty to have some epistemological explanation and some cosmogony and religious theology related to those rituals. I give those two examples because we're in a Chinese group, but I could have given explanation related to the Greeks or to the Romans, for example. I stop here.
Thank you, Quan. And Penny or Brian.
Yes, I just wanted to briefly from Mark's question, because since my verses were numbered differently in Leggy, I just wanted to say what he said, the words he used for the behavior. He said, the master said, let his words be sincere and truthful, and his actions honorable and careful. So sincere, which is exactly the same, instead of trustworthy, he said truthful, and his actions honorable, which you said honest, and careful instead of respectful. So I think they're very similar ideas that he was conveying, though. If you're sincere and truthful, and your actions are honorable and careful. So since Mark had mentioned what other translations were, I just wanted to say what Leggy had translated, those four key behaviors.
Yeah, I think that actually that's interesting, because when I heard that each translation, the thing that first had come to mind at a higher level was the importance of authenticity and character within that particular passage itself. So, and I think that was captured actually in Jason's translation as well as the Leggy translation. So,
let me ask one quick question here, basic English question here. So does the English word, because the Chinese words here use 敬, okay, and then in general I will translate as respectful. But I think Chinese respectful has implied some meaning of careful, cautious, this kind of meaning. I don't know, does English respectful has connotation of cautious, careful?
Lunyu.
That's my question.
I
Mark.
would like to. Okay, Mark, go ahead.
Okay. Mark, go ahead and respond. Quan, go ahead. You can,
Someone can go ahead and answer Jason's question. I have a related question for Penny and the others. Thanks, Penny. I was wondering if it did imply some sort of idea of universality, that these things would be recognized among all cultures, barbarians included.
Yeah, I think it does actually imply universality. I mean, that's my thought. That, yeah, these are things that are universally appreciated. So Quan, go ahead to answer Jason's question.
Yeah, it's about the word respect, okay? And here I have the occasion to be a little bit pedantic, as sometimes I'm a little bit pedantic. Respect in English comes from Latin res spectaculare, okay? And res spectaculare means to look again, okay? So to look again imply admiration, but also imply to be careful. So I would hypothesize that respect in English has the same richness of meaning than in Chinese.
I just want to echo Quan here. I agree with him, which is why I thought respectful was a good translation of Jing. Revere or venerate could also be kind of versions of Jing that might hold the connotation of a little bit more caution or care, but I thought respectful was more universalizable than venerate or revere, because those tend to have almost divine or religious connotations associated with them.
Yeah, thank you, both of you. I think that's a great explanation. Yeah. So sending us the words trustworthy, and the Leggy translate as truth, right? Truthfulness, right? So
I even brought attention to all the words and all the different translations of them.
Yes.
That we may be talking about this now.
yeah, we talk about the trustworthy, and the Leggy translates as truthfulness or something truth. So I think the Chinese word is 信, okay? So that's the way we supposed to speak. So that means your word is trustworthy. Why your word is trustworthy? Because you speak truth. I think that's and the truth is not metaphysical truth, but here is truth, is honest, you don't lie. I think that's what relation between trustworthy and truthfulness.
Go ahead, Nick, and then we'll move on to the next.
Yeah, maybe just make one comment on the Mark's question about universality. It's clear that Confucius always presented his theory as universal truth. However, at his time, the notion of universality is rather special, rather limited, in the sense that people thought the end of the world is when you reach the edge of the ocean, the seashore, for Chinese, I guess. So Taoism might have the more reflective notion about universality, but for the Confucius, it's rather limited, and there is a sense of the thinking being solipsistic, in a sense that everything happens in the Middle Kingdom, maybe on the edge there's some barbarians. So there was a very limited notion of existence of multiple civilizations out there, and that would will come to the same understanding of certain universal truth. So the notion of universal truth is different from our understanding today, I would say. Yeah.
So how did explain that? How did the limited understanding meaning impact the value and virtue of truth?
In a sense, it's solipsistic instead of multi. The other word, diversity of opinions, right? So it.
Okay, I mean, I can see that, but it's still the idea of honor and truth. That's what I was trying to reconcile, because what would be true, you still want to be honest. I mean, it's still the same value. Yes, I guess the limited perspectives on the world as to what is true, I guess that would be limiting. But truth in and of itself would still be a value. Anyway, Quan.
I would like to address that question of universality. I think that it would be a bit far-fetched to introduce the notion of diversity with that within Confucianism. I explain myself. Confucianism is a philosophy having universal pretensions, okay? I stress pretensions. Let's not forget that at the time, as all culture, civilization having a certain overbearing pretensions and looking down on the barbarians, and I would like to mention that the Greeks have the same attitude. The value of what is universal is defined by the people having the pretension to be universal and looking down on the people they call barbarians because they don't grant them the same level of civilizational development. Were they right to have that attitude? That is debatable. But in their mind, the production of their civilization is universal, and the other people they look down upon have to evolve to their level. Okay, once again, that overbearing attitude is debatable, but that is what they thought. Okay, same for the Greeks. And within that civilization, there is a group that they consider being evolved enough to have the privilege to talk about those things. Okay, the aristocrats, the scholar. Same for the Greeks. I'm not promoting overbearing attitudes or looking down on people. I'm only stating a very historical fact that they were culture having had the confidence, the self-confidence to think that they were at the center of the world and that their aristocracy has been endowed by God or by what you want to define what is high, what is good, what is beauty, what is goodness, what is truth. So in that sense, what they define as universal is truly universal for the people they think having their control and epistemological achievement. I stop here.
Thank you, Juan. So shall we move on to the next?
Yeah, let's read 9 and 10, which is about 人.
I don't know if Penny's there, but if she wants to read, but I can go ahead and read. The master said, the determined scholar and the man of virtue will not seek to live at the expense of injuring their virtue. They will even sacrifice their lives to preserve their virtue complete. Number 10, Zigong asked about the practice of virtue. The master said, making do his work well must first sharpen his tools. When you are living in any state, take service with the most worthy among its great officers, and make friends of the most virtuous among its scholars. Would you like to read the inner version? Quan, would you mind?
So, sorry, I'm a little bit ways.
Oh, I
I'm
caught
sorry.
you.
I would finish my candy. It would take 2 seconds. Okay, I'm ready now. Okay. 15.9. The master said, "The gentleman who is resolute and a run does not seek to live on at the expense of a run, and there are times when he would sacrifice his life to complete a run." 15.10. Zigong asked about run. The master said, "The craftsman who wishes to do his work well must first sharpen his tools. When you dwell in a state, serve those of its grandees who are worthy men. Befriend those who of its gentlemen who are run."
Okay, Jason.
All right. Verse 9. The master said, "Resolute, learned people and Ren people won't suffer to live if it hurts Ren. They would rather sacrifice themselves in order to achieve Ren." Verse 10. Zigong asked about the action of Ren. The master said, "A craftsman needs to sharpen his tool if he wishes to do a good job. When you dwell in this state, serve the ministers who are worthy, befriend the learned people who have the quality of Ren."
Thank you, Amon. Okay, so these two are simple and then, but both are very important because it has constantly been quoted in the Chinese conversation. That's why I like to separate these two, and they all related to Ren. So first, the chapter 9 talking about 治世仁人, okay, which means 士 means learned people, resolute learned people, and Ren people. I think here I think the English translation sounds like two people, but actually it means one kind of people. Okay, the person as a 士 and also as a Ren people. Okay, will suffer to live if it hurts them, and they will rather sacrifice themselves in order to achieve Ren. So here the message is Ren is more important than your life. So for next 2,000 years, whoever the martyr himself sacrifice his life, Chinese words will use the word achieve Ren. When somebody said achieve Ren, usually means he died. Okay, so don't use this word casually. So chapter 10, Zigong asks about Ren. Okay, and Confucius answer. Okay, this time Zigong is not asked about Ren, a single word. He asks about Wei Ren. That means action of Ren. Okay, so be more specific. So Confucius' answer is very interesting. He starts with a craftsman needs to sharpen his tool if he wishes to do a good job. Okay, this one also become a very common saying on that in the Chinese language. So if we look at back on chapter 8, okay, you only speak to the person you should speak. You don't waste your words to speak with the person you don't need to speak with. So if we take Confucius' point of view as instrumentalist point of view, and we see everything as a tool, here Confucius is instrumentalist, right? So he think about if you want to do a good job, you have to sharpen your tools. So when you want to be Ren, you need to find the Ren or worthy people, be friends with them. So in a way, he used friends as means to achieve your Ren. Okay, let's put this way. And or you can say find a friend to achieve your own virtue. So that's what I need to say. Amon, please.
I think we're going to have some real-time editing discussion, because something you said just thunderstruck me about verse 15:9, that phrase, 知识人人. I have read that everywhere. Everyone who ever translates it puts that and in there. Resolute, learned people, and ren people. But your supposition is that this is discussing one type of person. And therefore, I think there's a different rhetorical way this would sound in English. It would be communicated as something like resolute learned people, ren people, won't suffer, blah, 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 blah. So there's, with a comma, you could replace that and you could actually make it sound like one person. And it would be different than any other translation I've actually read that does actually refer to these as, in at least implicitly, as two types of individuals. However, now that you said that, and I thought about it, I agree with you. It does make sense that he's saying that the shi, who are in fact actually ren, will be the people who won't suffer this, or won't tolerate this. This is this is incommensurate with, you know, living in that situation. I kind of like that. And it's amazing what a just change in conjunction to comma could do. But yeah, the sorry to get all inside baseball on everybody for a moment, but this is what happens when you translate. There is no translation with, yeah, there's no translation without interpretation. And when you interpret something just slightly different, it can be kind of revolutionary, at least in a moment's notice. And here the subject is ren. You know, what is it that makes ren? And when Zigong asks, the master says, someone who sharpens their tools. I mean, all the rest of it is an elaboration of that, but the thrust, the crux of it, sharpen your tools. This takes me to a very literal image of Japanese craftsmen or Japanese carpenters, who, traditional Japanese carpenters, will spend hours of a day sharpening away at a tool. It's an act of meditation so that they can make a cut with one hit, so that they're not chopping and hacking and making a mess. The idea being that the time spent up front makes the execution perfect and finite. You only have to do it once. And so when Zigong is asking about ren, and the master says you need to sharpen your tools, he's talking about all that time that is put up front before you can serve well and befriend worthy people. You have to put the time into yourself, because you're not just going to be liked or befriend worthy people. You're not just going to get to, you know, stumble. I have some cynicism that says, you know, stumbling your way from failure to failure is ever upward is the structure of bureaucracy. But that's my cynicism. Confucius would disagree with that. He would say you can't actually, you know, fail your way upward. You have to have done all your due diligence well in advance to ever have a chance at being a resolute, learned person, a ren person.
Yep, thank you, Amon. And I like your explanation on chapter 10. You know, even we agree on this translation, but when we read, I probably focus on the sharpen its tool. Okay, so I kind of see Confucius as instrumentalist, so see everything as a tool for myself. But your explanation also, it makes a lot of sense to me. You talk about, it's talking about the prior work you need to prepare before you do a good job, not necessarily sharpen the tool. Okay, you have to be prepared. So same as you want to 为人 here. 为人 here could be because Zigong is not just you and me. Okay, Zhigong is a government officer. Okay, so when he talk about Weizhen, is he is doing the policy of Ren, then he has to do some preparation before he do it. So that's a different explanation, and I think I probably been due to the daily saying about this word. Okay, a craftsman needs to sharpen its tools if he wishes to do a good job. And actually, it does in today's meaning, does means instrumentalist. But in Confucius' time, he probably not thinking in this way. Thank you.
Go ahead, Quan.
Okay, I would have to say that paragraph 15.10 is interesting because it gives the methodology of the general definition of 12.1. Okay, at 12.1, the general definition, what is a run, is precisely to conquer yourself and to return to Ling. Of course, to conquer yourself, we can all have an understanding of what it means. But here at 15.10, three books later, it gives the practical methodology in the sense that a run is precisely to be perfectly humane, and to be perfectly humane is to be capable to see in a given situations what are the needs of everyone present in the group and how to make those people work together for a common endeavor. And here, when you dwell in a state, serve those of its grandee who are worthy men and befriend those of a gentleman who are run, in the sense that because you will be in interaction with those valuable people, you will practically put in your heart and your mind those uplifting experiences, so that later on, if you would be in different or lesser interactional situations, you would be capable to go back to that learning in order to be at the center, at the axis of those new situations in which you would be capable to read the needs of everyone and how to put everyone harmoniously or as harmoniously as possible in a common endeavor. Because often learning situations are easier situations than real life. So you have the time to build up your confidence or being street smart or streetwise, but with easier situations, so that later on, when you would be in real life, you would be capable to draw on those skills that you develop with the gentleman and with the worthy people. I stop here.
Thank you, Quan. Does anybody else have any comments about 9 or 10? Go ahead, Nick. Nick, your hand went up.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. First, Joseph, sorry, which verse did we start? Did we read 11 or not?
No, 9 to 10.
No, 10. Okay, okay. So we're on this mechanical. Okay, so I just want to make a point that this phrase that translation, the mechanic who wishes to do his work well must first sharpen his tools. This has become so famous. It's become part of the daily usage when parents or teachers tell the juniors, to go about life. That's the way to go. So it has become so pedantic. So much chicken soup for the soul, so to speak, drove into the Chinese culture. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mon. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize what Nick was just saying. This is a consummate part of the Confucian acculturation that has happened throughout a great deal of East Asia, which is why I pointed to Japan and the carpenter sort of ritual, because it is ritual for traditional carpenters to go through hours of this meditation that is also a pragmatic action. And it is a very literal interpretation of this idea that it permeates all through the culture. You can find it in incidental. We talked about the tea ceremony once before, and that would be an example of just another iteration of honing your craft before you perform it, would be another way to say it, more universalizing. And so whenever somebody is learning, they are in the process of honing their craft, and very much in the Confucian tradition. So as Nick said, you send your kids off to school, your kid comes home and says, I don't want to learn math. You have to sharpen your tools before you can perform any work. You will hear, this would be quoted at you. This would be thrown in your face as, this is why you do this. So stop complaining. You have to do this first. So I don't know if it's chicken soup or, the soap in the mouth, but it works both ways.
Interesting, and I just, it maybe I misinterpreted when I first read it, is that I looked at it as something as almost to develop your moral character before you actually go into actually do whatever it is that you're going to do professionally. So when I read the last line, and make friends of the most virtuous among its scholars, and in reading the previous passage, I look at it as something as less intellectual, meaning practical, and more moral, possibly.
I don't think the two are separated in the Confucian sort of framework, that the intellect and the moral are developed in unison. One begets the other.
Right. Okay. Does anybody else have any other comments? Number 9 is also very interesting, as the idea that we can't be harmed outside of our own personal moral integrity. So, which actually relates back to honor in number 6 a little bit. But are there any other comments? If not, we can go to the next set of
Yeah, I think
chapters.
Next we have a lot of short one. That's read 11 to 15.
Okay. I can read, or Penny, or if you, I can read. Yanwan asked how the government of a country should be administered. The master said, follow the seasons of Zai. Ride in the state of carriage of Yin. Wear the ceremonial cap of Zhao. Let the music be the Shao with its pantomonies, or pantomone. I mispronouncing this word. Banish the songs of Zhang, and keep far from specious talk, or specious talkers. The songs of Zhang are licentious, specious. Talkers are dangerous. Am I saying that correctly?
I think the only one you really had a hard time with was pantomime, but yes, for the most part, I think you got it.
Thank you. Yeah, pantomime. Thank you. The master said, if a man take no thought about what is distant, he will find sorrow near at hand. The master said, it is all over. Seen one who loves virtue as he loves beauty. The master said, was not Zhang when like one of who had stolen his situation. He knew the virtue and the talents of Hu, of Lei Zhu, and yet did not procure that he should stand with him in court. Number 15, the master said, he who requires much from himself and little from others will keep himself from being the object of resentment.
Okay. 11.11. 15.11. Yan Yuan asked about managing a state. The master said, implement the calendar of the Xia, ride the carriages of the Yin, wear the ceremonial caps of the Zhou. For music, the Shao dance. Get rid of the melodies of Zhong and keep crafty talkers at a distance. The melodies of Zhong are overwrought. Crafty talkers are dangerous. 15.12. The master said, a man who does not think far ahead will have troubles near at hand. 15.13. The master said, enough. I have yet to see a man who loves virtue as much as sex. 15.14. The master said, did not Zhang Wenzhong purloin his privilege of position? He was aware that Liu Xiahui was worthy, but would not raise him to office beside him. 15.15. The master said, if one emphasizes enhancing one's own qualities and curtails finding fault with others, one will keep resentment at a distance.
I'll go ahead and start reading while you pull it up, Jason, just because I want to help expedite things. 1511. Yan Yuan asked about managing a state. The master said, use the proper calendar of Xia, ride in the simple carriage of Ying, wear the ceremonial cap of Zhou, perform the music of Shao dance from Sage King Shun, get rid of the melodies of Zhang, and stay away from flatterers. The melodies of Zhang are licentious. Flatterers are dangerous. 12. The master said, a man who doesn't think far ahead will have sorrows nearby. 13. The master said, it's all over. I have never seen one who loves virtue as much as he loves sex. 15:14. The master said, did Zhang Wenzhong steal the position of others? He knew that Liu Xiahui was worthy, but didn't recommend him for the position beside him. 15:15. The master said, if one demands much from himself and little from others, they will keep compliments at a distance. You're muted, Jason.
Yeah, 15 is complaints, not complaint, right?
15:15. If one demands much from himself and little from others, they will keep complaints at a distance.
Yeah, thank you, Amon. And okay, I think there's a lot of short one. And chapter 11, we need some explanation, right? Yuan Yuan asked about managing a state. Remember, Yuan Yuan is Confucius' the best student, and he asked about managing a state, but actually he never get an official job, so he never had a chance to do it. Okay, and the Confucius' answer is interesting. He quote a lot of ancient things, right? Using the calendar in Chinese history tradition, calendar is very important. So Xia dynasty is a good calendar. Wow, that's so-called Chinese, the lunar calendar is a Xia dynasty, start from Xia dynasty. And then write in the simple carriage of yin, which is simplicity. Okay, that's the second dynasty. The first dynasty is Xia. The second dynasty is Yin. And the third dynasty is Zhou, which is good ceremony. So I have a calendar, simplicity, and ceremonial. So these three kinds of things. And then he talked about Shao dance from the sage king Sun, okay, which is ancient sage king. So everything will complete in this music, Shao dance, okay, so-called that's music. So here Confucius will compare the music with language. So here he changed the subject. He talked about the good music, which is perfect. Then he talked about zheng. Zheng is another state during Confucius' time. According to Confucius, their music is licentious. Their melody is licentious. Probably in today's view is pop music, rapper, this kind of thing. Confucius will prefer the ancient classic music. So then he talked about perfect music, then talk about the licentious music, then he talked about the flatter, right? The good music, bad music, then they will lead to flatter, which is dangerous language. So that's the degeneration, okay, of the sound. Let's take this way. So that's he's talking about. Today is getting worse and worse, but let's go back to the first dynasty calendar, the second dynasty's simplicity of living, third dynasty, which is Zhou dynasty, the ceremonial, the rituals. So that's Confucius' idea of managing a state. Go back to the ancient. Chapter 12, okay, I think that's become a very common saying in today's Chinese language. A man who does not think far ahead will have a sorrow nearby, far and near. 13, I think 13 is a repeat from book 9, chapter 18, but book 9 doesn't have, it's all over, so that's it. And then Ling is translated as, I never seen who love virtue as much as he loved beauties. And actually the Chinese words here is 色, and I believe Confucius means sex, not means aesthetic beauties. It means beautiful woman. Chapter 14, Zhang Wenzong. Okay, Zhang Wenzong we mentioned in book 5, chapter 18, right? He is the one has raised the turtle, and then and he used turtle, okay, as a foretell something is going to happen. So people think Zhang Wenzong is smart. That's probably 50 years before Confucius' time. So Confucius said he is in book 5, Confucius, Zhang Wenzong is not smart. He used turtle, something like this. And this one, book 15, is further criticized Zhang Wenzong. He said he steal. Why he steal? Because he refused to recommend another worthy person, Liu Xiahui, to take the position next to him. So in this case, any government officer should recommend a worthy person, a valuable person to the state. if he or he refused to do so or fail to do so, it's steal, okay, because you steal the position. 15. The master said, if one demands much from himself and little from others, they will keep complaints at a distance. So Confucius, I do the word count. This word, 怨, generally I translate as complaints. Okay, turn out it's very important word in Confucius Analects. It shows up 20 times. So seems like everyday life, stay away from complaints. Okay, it's very important lesson or very important thing for Confucius. So that's I like to mention this word. It's shown many times. Yeah, Amon, something to say.
Yes, and you'll have to forgive me my verbal slippage there. I wanted to head Nick off at the pass here because he talks about some of these phrases being very hackneyed, and there are absolute hackneyed phrases or just quips that are in this little series. A man who doesn't think far ahead will have sorrows nearby. That's just one example, and even the one I messed up is actually one that's pretty common. If one demands much of himself and little from others, they will keep complaints, blame, enmity, grievances at a distance. There's a lot of ways you can translate the word yen, but I do think complaints is perfectly legitimate. I did want to point out, because as I was reading this as he was talking, I want to take everybody on a very odd thought experiment with me for a moment. Please imagine with me that we're circa 1950 and Che Guevara was just elected governor of California and has decided to secede from the United States. And somebody asks Governor Che, now President Che, well, how are we going to run things? And he says, look, we're going to get this right. We're going to go back and we're going to adopt the Mayan calendar because they did it better than we did. And we're going to get all these cars out of here because they're just messing up. We're going to get some horse-drawn carriages back in action in this place. It was good for the soil. It was good for everything. We're going to stop playing this, British invasion stuff that's starting to invade now. In fact, we're going to just get that ragtime jazz and, classic good Latino sounds into this area and kill the marketers. They're terrible. They're evil. They're just dangerous. All the Wall Street madmen got to go. This is kind of an equivalency between what he is telling Yan Yuan in 1511 and this little fantasy I've just concocted on the fly, because what he's talking about is trying to extract that golden age and bring it back into practical action. And it would be as revolutionary as those sort of examples that I just used in terms of from time to place. Going all the way back to the Shah for a calendar is ancient. That's very ancient. I mean, a millennia plus for Confucius, but he sees it as the proper calendar. It fit better. Going back to the yin for carriages, that would be like cart and buggies from the 1950s. It would feel that disparate in time, not that it was just 50 years or 75 years, but it would be that monumental leap backwards. And the same thing, recapture the music of the Zhou. This was something I grew up with, something I could still hear, coming up as a kid. And now we've got this ridiculous, licentious music that's got people swaying their hips on the dance floor. We can't have that. Get that old time ragtime music back now. And the flatterers, those who speak with flattery, it's like the market gurus of Madison Avenue, the Madison Avenue madmen, the people who know how to be rhetorically clever, but can misguide society right off the rails. I really like this passage because it absolutely captures some of the most fundamental aspects of not just Confucianism, but of Chinese culture, that tradition is the highest of value, that the highest place you can find truth is in tradition. You'll find it there. You won't find it by some sort of, disjunctive syllogism. I was reading my symbolic logic when we were talking about it. You're not going to find it by extracting out, a rarefied proof. You're going to find it by looking back in time and getting to the golden age when things were right. I think not all of these passages exactly address that, but I think that is worth paying real attention to, because Confucius kind of gives up the entire game of Eastern etymology here. Our truth is in tradition. Tradition is the foundation of truth, much as in the West we have essentialism as the foundation of our truth.
Okay, we'll open it up for comments. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, Amon's work said this presumption of authority from tradition is so heavy going. Anyway, so I want to make a slightly different point on the same passage. Though a few weeks ago we talked about the parallel with Plato's The Republic, where Plato wanted to ban poets, and here you got a Confucius, more or less the same time of Plato wanted to ban a certain type of music. So I find that interesting. So these guys were having a very strong opinions about certain things they thought the statecraft, therefore they want to ban. So just
Well, I think we lost you, Nick, or either that I'm frozen. Well, why don't we go to Quan and give Nick an opportunity as soon as he is able to talk.
Okay, so what I want to say is that it is very right that in all literate culture, you have the notion or the concept of a golden age or of a utopia, okay, when everything was perfect and where everything was perfectly dandy. I would say that that golden age is the imaginary space where you have precisely the upper trigram, if I use the Chinese lexicon, when you have the beauty, the goodness, and the truth. So I would hypothesize that in the two cases, the West and China, the essence of beauty, goodness, and truth are the same. But the imaginary projection in China is to project it in a distant past, and in the West, it is to project it in the distant future. But notwithstanding the difference in projection, the essence of beauty, goodness, truth are the same. And in terms of inseparability of knowledge and action, I hypothesize that it doesn't make any difference. Why? Because either you project perfection to the past or the future, the only place where you can act to change reality is the present. So the space of imagination doesn't change that the mythology is a conceptual or symbolic tool to encourage you to work in the present to change things which are not satisfactory. I stop here.
Thank you, Juan. Does anybody else have a comment about any of these passages? Go ahead, Amon.
A comment and a question. Are we going to try and get another round of them in, or are we going to open up to discussion at this point?
I don't know. Jason, what do you think?
Let's go another 3 because they are very short.
Okay,
It's
then
okay?
I'll hold my comments otherwise.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 16, 17, and 18. They're
So,
very
the master said, when a man is not in the habit of saying, "What shall I think of this? What shall I think of this?" I can indeed do nothing with him. Number 17. The master said, when a number of people are together for a whole day without their conversation turning on righteousness, and when they are found fond of carrying out the suggestions of a small, theirs is indeed a hard case. Number 18. The master said, the superior man in everything considers righteousness to be essential. He performs it according to the rules of propriety. He brings it forth in humility. He completes it with sincerity. This is indeed a superior man.
Okay, the Eno translation, 15.16, the master said, those who are not always saying, what shall I do? What shall I do? I can do nothing with them. 15.17, the master said, those who sit in a group all day enjoying clever conversation without their talk ever touching on right, such men are difficult to deal with. 15.18, the master said, the Chunzi takes right as his basic substance. He puts it into practice with Li, uses compliance to enact it, and faithfulness to complete it.
Thank you, Climb. We'll go to Jason.
All right. 15:16. The master said, for those who don't ask, what should I do? What should I do? I don't know what to do with them. 15:17. The master said, those who spend a whole day socializing, do not talk about proper subjects and act with petty-minded cleverness, they are difficult to deal with or to gain any achievement. 15:18. The master said, a junzi takes righteousness, duty, as his essence, acts according to Li ritual, speaks humbly, and completes task trustworthily. What a junzi!
Yeah. Thank you, Amon. Okay. So 16. Okay. I think all these 3 are quite simple. Okay. Chapter 16. I think Confucius means if you don't ask or you never question yourself, Confucius say, I don't know what to do with that, because I think Confucius means he doesn't know how to teach that. So you should have a question. Otherwise, there's no way to learn. So that's my understanding. Chapter 17. That's interesting. Confucius said, those who spend the whole day socializing, 群, okay, that means the people group together. Confucius used this word for socializing, and I believe it's not bad words. But the bad thing is they spend whole day together socializing too much. Okay, just today we teach our kids, you need social but not socializing all day long. And then the worst thing is they never talk about subject proper subject, right? They talking about gossip, and they only show off their petty-minded cleverness. That's Confucius said. Confucius' words is 难以哉. He used this word often. It's difficult. Okay, it literally means difficult, but we don't know what does Confucius mean. Difficult. It could mean difficult to deal with this kind of people, or he could mean it's difficult for them to achieve something. So I don't know what Confucius means, but Confucius just said it's difficult. The master, the 18. Okay, so I think here he talked about 4 things, right? Take the righteousness as essence, take the richer as action, and humble when you speak, and complete your task in a trustworthy way. So that's the 4 things related to the one's essence, one's action, one's language, and one's task, complete the task. So that's a Jun's. That's another definition of Jun's. Here I'd like to mention about the word Xun, okay, and then I translate as humble. I think a couple of weeks ago we discussed does Confucius use the word humble, and I double check Confucius used this word probably only twice, or humble, and this humbleness usually both times associated with the language. So when it's very important, Confucius probably doesn't want, probably not talk much about acting humble, but very important is you have to speak humble. I think control your language. I think that's in Confucius' teaching. So I stop here, and I'm out.
I had so many windows open, I didn't know how to unmute myself. Thank you. Since we're going to open it here, I'm going to talk only briefly about these 3, and then I'm going to give some overall impressions. These 3 are just a contrast of who is worthy, who is unworthy. And by worthy of what? Worthy of his teachings. That 15, 16, if you're not asking, all right, I'm free, what should I be doing? Then I don't know what to do with you. If you just finish your task so that you can run off and go nap by the river, you're not my student. You're not the kind of student I want. I want somebody who's hungry for the next task, the next lesson, the next idea. And I may be projecting here, because the next one, all I could think of was, I don't know how to deal with these kids who text in class. They spend all day socializing and they're talking about nothing, and they're just impossible. It's difficult. What's difficult? It's difficult in every regard. It's difficult to teach class. It's difficult to get a lesson through to them. They're just difficult all around. And so I think the full stop there works. Adding the parentheticals does help give some connotation or some other ideas. But I think any teacher who reads this and has spent one afternoon with kids doing that all day in a classroom can just stop with, it's difficult, and they get it. And then talking about what is worthy, the Junsa takes righteousness as their duty, acts with Li, completes things, and is trustworthy that they'll complete things. These are, the qualities that make for a Junsa. This is just a compare and contrast list. And it really tells you that Confucius was something of a taskmaster. I wanted to jump back a few degrees. I won't take a lot of time, but there was something that Nick had mentioned before about the solipsism of the Confucian worldview. And I know there was a little pushback on that. There was a little chat in the, or a little back and forth in the chat about it as well. There is an absolutely prescriptive quality to Confucianism. Inarguably, it is a prescription. It is a determination of how it ought to be. And he makes that argument throughout. Here we see it made again. It's the subtext to everything. Whereas what Nick was saying about, the Taoists who travel into barbarian lands and probably find truth there, it's because the attempt of Taoist text is to be more descriptive than prescriptive, though obviously there are elements of both in any text, in any proposition. But that descriptive nature allows for a mindset that travels to the barbarian lands and says, hey, show me your truth, show me your beauty. Confucianism is very solid. This is what is truth. This is what is beauty. You can travel to the barbarian lands, but you're bringing us with you, and you will project that into the world around you. And if their conception of it is too far afield, your duty is to bring them back in line with the truth. And the truth is the next thing I wanted to get to. What Quan said about the idea of a utopia in the past or the future being immaterial, I disagree. It is significant where utopia lies in the minds of people, because it changes the entire production of the etymological institutions. Every argument that had to be made in China for thousands of years had to be predicated on this was the tradition, this is how it was. Anytime something new was invented, it had to be, it was this way back when. Sima Qian, the great historian's father, Sima Tian, actually invented Taoism. He invented legalism. He invented schools that we now refer to as 100 schools by casting backwards and saying, oh yeah, the guards back in the early Zhou, they were the ones who had the legalistic mindset, and that's where we get this school of Fa from. So initiation is not appreciated in a traditionalist society where that is your ontological nexus. This is different than when it's projected into the future. And that's not to say that where that nexus of ontological truth lies in the Western mindset is better. It is just differently problematic. But it does not, it does create a difference. New, novel, inventive, that can be appreciated when past is not supreme, when it is not the supreme thing to go backwards in time. And I think that's what Nick was getting at when he was talking about the solipsism, this idea that the Middle Kingdom was the world. Everything else was ghosts, demons, and barbarians, and uncivilized lands that needed some civilizing. The result of that project is that civilizing, that Confucianism, spread beyond the Middle Kingdom in throughout East Asia until it hit the Gobi, it hit the Himalayas, and it would have probably gone further if it could have gotten into India over the Himalayas and they hadn't been busy doing their own thing. But yeah, it's so omnipresent in the Eastern world because it wasn't shy about being determinative of how people ought to be and where those ideas, validity and truth, rested, and it gelled with everything that was already in their belief systems. So I just want to kind of bring those to the forefront. I want to thank everybody. I've got to do some multitasking. I'll still be here, but I'll listen in as long as I can, and I'll be back next week and even better rested because I'll be that much closer to the end of the quarter.
Thank you, Amon. Now we'll open it up for comments on actually these three passages or anything else this evening that you found to be of particular interest. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, just a question, maybe to Jason and Amon. For the verse 16, how did you translate that question? Because I'm reading here the Leggie's translation. What shall I think of this? What shall I think of this? How did you guys translate that?
I translate as what should I do? What should I do? Okay. 如之何如之. Actually, when I double check, I think probably should translate as how to do it, how to do it. You know, so that's my opinion. You know, the Chinese word 如之何如之.
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Is
welcome any
is-
suggestion. Yeah, welcome any. But I will take this way as Confucius' teaching philosophy. Okay, if you don't question yourself, you don't think, then it will be difficult to deal with this kind of people. So.
Yeah. Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. So my comment is it's very important the question. This is he's asking, and this is a very great question. What is it? So that strikes me as the significance, because he's focused pragmatic on how to do things, right? For good reason, do the right thing, but nevertheless, the focus is on how. But the Greeks' interest, TSD, what is this? What is the concept of this? So that obviously led to a mass of that. Yeah.
Thank you. Had a little bit of trouble. You're breaking up in the end, but go ahead, Quan.
Okay, so I want to come back to the question of the mythology and of the projection of the idea in the past or in the future, because I think here we have two different topics. First, the first topic is self-confidence. Either a culture would say that this is the truth, the beauty, and the goodness, and that there's not that we reach to the highest definition of what is beauty, goodness, and truth, and all the others, they are barbarians because they did not reach to that, and we define what is beauty, goodness, and truth. That is self-confidence bordering on arrogance, of course. And some cultures in the past had that self-confidence and that's bordering on arrogance, and the Chinese culture was one of them. The other thing, I think that we have to distinguish the source of ideality of ideal states, not in chronos, okay, in the sense that not in the lower trigram, being that projected in the past and the future. The source of ideality or of ideal image is in the upper trigram, meaning in tempus. And that tempus is timelessness. And this is related to the self-confidence and the capacity from that self-confidence to explore reality and to invent the tools for exploring reality. And when those tools are invented or created or made, and the justification to introduce the tools of exploration or of power have to walk through a projection in the future and the past, will depends on the mythology of the group in question. And I think that what is important is that you are capable to be in timelessness and in the upper trigram, to be the source of inventivity and of creativity. Your justification a posteriori on chronos, meaning we move closer to what was ideal to the past, or will we move closer to what is ideal in the future? Is not the mental engine at the core of the mythology allowing that creativity and that inventivity? I stop here.
Well said. Does anybody else have any comments about this evening or anything that we've covered, or specifically these last three passages?
Yeah, I'd just like to say something because the tower to I believe we will spend two more weeks to finish book 15, at least at most 3 weeks to finish. So December we are going to take off for the holiday, and then and also take a break for the Confucius Analects, because we only have 5 books left. Okay, we have done a lot. It's not easy, I know. It's to read Confucius Analects for everybody. It's difficult. And then we are going to switch to Dao De Jing, which we have done that for since 2021, I think. You know. And then Amon and I feel like we need to retranslate the Dao De Jing one more time. And then beginning on January, we will start doing the Dao De Jing. And total has 81 chapters, and we are going to probably do 4 chapters per week. And then I think the time-wise will be easier to control for Dao De Jing, because there's no very short, very long, basics almost the same length on each one. So it will be easy to control. So 4 chapters per week, and then we can finish in about 20 weeks, I think. So thank you, everyone. And then I know reading Analects